This is not Snow White, but this is the movie that they made. And it's like, oh yeah, she's gonna be a girl boss. She's gonna liberate her kingdom. Well, congratulations, you played yourself. This is what you get when you try to push feminism and bullshit girl boss moves on the people.
Why should I trust you? You're always tricking me into going places I don't wanna. Oh, you said we were going to a place Walt Disney built.
No, Peter, I said supported.
Great. She honestly looks like like a homeless person at a bus stop. This is and looking rough. I mean, clearly. Like if you pass by somebody looking like this, you're like, dude, can I part with the grubby dollar bill in my back pocket? Yeah, totally.
How does one of the most cherished fairy tales ever told, a cornerstone of a global entertainment empire, suddenly find itself engulfed in a raging inferno of controversy? It's a story that seems almost unbelievable, a tale not just of corporate missteps, but of potential self-sabotage swirling around a modern reimagining of Disney's very first princess. What happens when the Magic Kingdom seems determined to dismantle its own legacy, one baffling decision at a time? Stick around, because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you might imagine.
Well, they could just write a new story. I mean, that's you don't have to take a classic fairy tale that's been loved for generations and destroy it. You can just write a new story about an empowered girl who wants to be a great leader and not call it Snow White.
It all started with a casting choice that seemed on the surface like a dream come true. Rachel Zegler, a fresh face who had already wowed critics and audiences with her performance in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, was handpicked by Disney for the monumental task of bringing Snow White to life in a live-action spectacle. It was the kind of career-defining role that actors dream of, a chance to step into the shoes of an iconic character beloved by generations. She was poised for superstardom, seemingly the perfect choice to introduce a classic princess to a new era. The stage was set for another Disney triumph, but nobody, perhaps not even Disney executives themselves, could have predicted the sharp turn this fairy tale would take, largely thanks to the words coming directly from the newly crowned princess herself. What followed wasn't just a few awkward interview moments, it was the beginning of a public relations meltdown that would set the internet ablaze.
Rachel Zegler learned that your star can fall about as fast as it rises. Here's a photo of Rachel Zegler taken today. Okay. Looking like a complete slob. Hungover as hell. Wobbling around.
The first whispers of trouble emerged from Zegler's own press tour interviews, where her comments about the original 1937 animated classic began raising eyebrows. It wasn't just mild criticism or acknowledgments of outdated elements. It felt, to many listeners, like outright disdain for the very film that gave her character life. She famously referred to the original Prince Charming not as a romantic hero, but as a stalker who pursues Snow White relentlessly. In multiple interviews, she described the original love story as weird and something her iteration of the character wouldn't be focused on. Instead, Zegler declared the new Snow White's dream wasn't about finding true love, but about becoming a fearless leader who could save her kingdom herself. While updating classic characters is common, the perceived contempt in her tone struck a nerve. Here was the lead actress of a massive Disney blockbuster seemingly trashing the beloved source material, biting the hand that was offering her a global platform and, presumably, a very generous paycheck. The irony wasn't lost on fans or critics, and her words quickly became ammunition for those already skeptical of Disney's remake strategy. These comments weren't just off-the-cuff remarks, they seemed to align perfectly with a much bigger and arguably more controversial shift Disney itself was planning for the iconic princess.
What did you think was going to happen when you chose specifically this actress for the job?
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Well, I'm sorry they didn't line up to see your love quite clearly based on the box office numbers.
Indeed, Disney hadn't been shy about its intention to drastically modernize Snow White. The studio, grappling with cultural shifts and facing increasing pressure to update its classic narratives, saw the live-action remake as an opportunity to correct perceived flaws in the 1937 original. Gone would be the passive princess waiting for rescue. This Snow White was envisioned as proactive, intelligent, and driven by ambition rather than romance. The narrative was explicitly being reshaped to focus on female empowerment, with Zegler herself echoing this sentiment, stating the film was about Snow White finding her own agency. This approach wasn't entirely new. Disney had attempted similar updates with varying degrees of success in other live-action remakes like Mulan and The Little Mermaid. However, the sheer iconic status of Snow White, combined with Zegler's blunt pronouncements, made this particular overhaul feel different, more aggressive. For many, it felt less like a sensitive update and more like a forced injection of contemporary politics into a timeless fairy tale, sparking debates about whether Disney was respecting its legacy or simply pandering to modern trends at the expense of story. Changing the princess's motivations was one thing, but then came the decision that truly baffled onlookers and sent shockwaves through the fan base.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Perhaps the most visually jarring and symbolically potent change involves Snow White's 7 loyal companions. The iconic 7 dwarfs Dopey, Grumpy, Doc, Happy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Sleepy, arguably the heart and soul of the original film's charm and humor, were deemed problematic. This decision seemed partly fueled by comments from acclaimed actor Peter Dinklage, who criticized the original story's portrayal of dwarfs as potentially reinforcing stereotypes. However, Disney's reaction wasn't to engage in nuanced representation or hire dwarf actors for reimagined roles. Instead, they opted for what many saw as a bizarre overcorrection. Leaked set photos revealed Snow White accompanied not by dwarfs but by a diverse group of individuals described as magical creatures, including only one actor with dwarfism. The photos sparked immediate ridicule online, with critics mocking the costumes and the seemingly generic fantasy aesthetic. The move was widely condemned, not just by nostalgic fans, but also by advocates who argued that erasing dwarf characters entirely was a step backward, denying actors with dwarfism significant roles and representation. Instead of addressing Dinklage's concerns constructively, Disney appeared to have sidestepped the issue altogether, creating a solution that pleased almost no one and further alienated audiences. The backlash over the dwarfs added fuel to a fire already raging around the film's star, turning the production into a lightning rod for multiple controversies simultaneously.
More on Disney's nosedive. We keep talking about these woke projects of Disney and how recently, funnily enough, right on the back of the Trump administration coming to power, they've turfed a lot of their DEI projects and inserting particularly LGBTIQ indoctrination into cartoons and programs that are streamed into the little minds of millions around the globe. But their latest foray had already been created, that being the idiotically woke version of Snow White.
Beyond the script changes and the dwarf fiasco, the intense spotlight turned harshly onto Rachel Zegler herself, not just for her comments, but for her perceived attitude. Clips from various interviews went viral, painting a picture in the eyes of her detractors of an actress who was arrogant, ungrateful, and dismissive of the fans she seemingly needed. One particular comment where she compared herself to the ancient Greek statue Winged Victory of Samothrace, stating that even though it arrived at the Louvre in pieces, people still lined up to see it, and she hoped the same for herself, despite her flaws, was widely interpreted as entitled. Other moments where she appeared dismissive or overly assertive about her modern interpretation were dissected endlessly online. Whether fair or not, a narrative took hold. Zegler wasn't just starring in Snow White, she actively disliked the original and felt superior to it. This perception fueled a massive online backlash with hashtags calling for boycotts and countless videos criticizing her demeanor. She became the face of everything critics disliked about the remake and more broadly about what they saw as Hollywood's out-of-touch girl boss agenda. With controversy swirling around the script and the star, Disney found itself facing a mounting PR nightmare of epic proportions.
For remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarfs.
Okay, but what do they call them?
Why
now,
would they
too?
get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group. You just erased that whole image. The argument should have been from Peter Dinklage. There's power of being on TV. There's power of television. And to put 7 people with dwarfism on camera in a major Disney movie, there's still power there. If the story is offensive, change the story, don't change the character.
The cumulative effect of the controversies became undeniable when Disney made a drastic move, slamming the brakes on the film's release. Originally slated for March 2024, Snow White was abruptly pushed back an entire year to March 2025. While official reasons often cite production logistics, the timing fueled widespread speculation that the delay was a direct response to the relentless negative buzz and potentially disastrous audience test screenings. Rumors immediately began circulating about extensive, costly reshoots aimed at softening Zegler's character, possibly reincorporating more traditional elements or fundamentally altering the tone to appease disgruntled fans. This delay wasn't just a minor scheduling change, it signaled that Disney recognized it had a serious problem. The situation placed CEO Bob Iger, who had returned to Disney promising stability and a return to creative excellence, under even greater scrutiny. It amplified ongoing criticisms that the company under his recent leadership had lost its way, prioritizing political messaging and corporate mandates over beloved characters and compelling storytelling, leading to a string of underperforming projects and growing fan disillusionment. This whole saga, from controversial comments to missing dwarfs and emergency delays, raises a fundamental question about the original magic that built the Disney empire.
So I wonder whether it took Disney to hit rock bottom to lose potentially $300 million for them to bring back what every parent across the world wants, which is child-friendly, Christian value, good entertainment, things for kids again. That's all everybody wants.
It's impossible to discuss this troubled remake without remembering the film that started it all. The 1937 animated Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wasn't just another movie, it was a cinematic revolution. It was Walt Disney's audacious gamble, the first feature-length animated film ever produced, created against the advice of nearly everyone in Hollywood who believed audiences wouldn't sit through a cartoon that long. Its unprecedented success didn't just save Walt Disney Productions from potential bankruptcy, it fundamentally proved the artistic and commercial viability of animation, paving the way for classics like Pinocchio, Cinderella, and the entire Disney legacy we know today. It was a technical marvel, a storytelling triumph, and became an enduring cultural touchstone. The stark contrast between that groundbreaking origin story and the current remake's journey, mired in controversy, actor backlash, drastic alterations, and emergency course corrections, feels particularly poignant. It highlights how far the perception of Disney has shifted for some, from a purveyor of timeless magic to a corporation seemingly at war with its own history and fan base. So, where does this leave the multi-million-dollar production and its embattled star after such a tumultuous journey?
This thing is an absolute disaster, all right? An absolute disaster. This is an absolute calamity. This is a catastrophe. This is a tragedy, an apocalypse, an accident, a fatality, a debacle. This is a casualty. This is a cataclysm, a crash, a collapse, an upheaval, a meltdown, a misfortune, Armageddon, doomsday.
What would the Joker say to Disney in these moments? He'd say, you get what you effing deserve, because Disney knowingly hired the most insufferable feminist girl boss in the history of cinema to play its most iconic Disney princess.
We stand now watching a perfect storm unfold, a lead actress whose public statements inadvertently alienated a huge portion of the potential audience, drastic and divisive changes made to a universally beloved classic, intense and sustained fan backlash fueled by social media, and a major studio caught scrambling behind the scenes, delaying releases and reportedly ordering expensive reshoots. It's a confluence of factors that has turned Disney Snow White into one of the most talked about films in recent memory, but for all the wrong reasons. The final chapter of this saga is yet to be written. Will the year-long delay and rumored reshoots manage to salvage the film, smoothing over the rough edges and finding a balance that can win back skeptical viewers? Can Rachel Zegler's public image recover from the firestorm, allowing her talent to shine through the controversy? Or is this version of Snow White destined to be remembered not as a modern fairy tale, but as a cautionary one, a high-profile example of how even the most powerful studio can stumble when it appears to lose touch with its audience and its own foundational magic? Only time and the eventual box office receipts will tell if this story finds a happily ever after or ends as one of Disney's most public and arguably self-inflicted disasters. The Magic Kingdom is holding its breath, and so are we.